Greetings, friends. I hope you're doing well. I hope you are well. I hope you're safe and with loved ones. And, when you have to, wearing a mask. So I've been writing through this, and I've been writing about my time on the road in the 90s. And not that I think anybody will care, but it's just what I've been doing. I've been writing. And I've kind of given this thing a title called Comedy Saved My Life, even though I don't know what it is. But I've given it a title called Comedy Saved My Life, even though that's not true. My wife saved my life, but if it wasn't for comedy, I would have never met my wife. So this story is called Mississippi Shotgun. It's a couple of pages. It'll go by very quickly. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you do, if you want to tell me, I wouldn't be opposed to that. That'd make me happy. Yeah. So, but thank you if you do listen. Thank you. And again, the story's called Mississippi Shotgun. I'm going to be wearing these. These are my wife's. I couldn't find any other ones. All right, here we go. And I'm reading it too. So, I know I should be off script by now. The first time I saw myself with a gun in my mouth, I laughed. It was 1998, somewhere in Mississippi. I don't remember the town, but I do remember the time, 4:23 a.m. The whiskey was gone. So was the beer. There was half a joint on the nightstand. It was your standard roadside motor lodge. I could list all the problems with it, or I could just tell you that upon checking in, I noticed the toilet hadn't been flushed, and the previous occupant had had some digestive and evacuation issues. The whole place reeked of gaping sadness. It sounds depressing in hindsight, but it was the freest time in my life. Sure, 2 or 3 times a month I would be overwhelmed by a wake of aching sadness that could last for hours. But fuck, I've been dealing with that my whole life. Just hide, hold on, and wait for it to pass. I wasn't suicidal, ever. You could say I was too chicken shit, too much of a self-involved asshole, or too opposed to littering to do it. All would be true. And there were people I didn't want to disappoint, parents and a brother that didn't deserve to live with that, and a woman I had started dating and I would go on to marry. All of that was also true. Of course, everyone who commits suicide also has some version of that, and they do it anyway. So, who the fuck knows? By definition, I was a comedian, but what I really did was drive. I once drove for 2 days, 12 hours each day, stopping only for gas, fast food, and to sleep 6 hours in my car at a truck stop for 2 30-minute spots and $300. To the majority of you, I'll say, yes, that's ridiculous, but it's not even close to the most ridiculous thing I've done for comedy. And to the minority, I'll say, I have no idea who books it, and I will not put a word in for you. I drove. I lived in my car. Sometimes I couch surfed. More often than I wanted, I slept in my car. When I wasn't driving, I was on stage. The moments in between were filled with alcohol and books, back to the filthy motel to pass out, and then driving, listening to music or books on cassette. This was pre-everyone having a cell phone. I had seen a phone in a car once. I hadn't used a computer since the Army. I had a beeper that I rarely turned on and a calling card, but mostly I just drove. The venues were bars, sometimes restaurants, occasionally a dance club or a dance hall, depending on whether it was urban or country. The urban ones were in the country, and the country ones were in the city. The bars could be pretty nice places that catered to middle and upper middle class customers who enjoyed live entertainment. Or they could be windowless concrete bunkers that catered to raging alcoholics. I've worked fairs and carnivals, a wedding and a funeral, a used car lot and a morgue. Okay. It was a country club, but it felt like a fucking morgue. The shows could be packed, wall-to-wall people, or just a handful, seated as far away from one another as the room would allow. Social distancing before social distancing was fucking cool. Sometimes the customers knew there was a show. Occasionally, they were there for the show, but just as often, they had no idea a show was happening that night. That was normally the case at the venues that even locals were afraid to frequent. Sometimes you get a standing ovation. Sometimes just the sound of chairs screeching and one person clapping like Citizen Kane as you exited the stage. Regardless, you had to wait to get paid. That's a lonely drink. Staring straight ahead, surrounded by a room full of stink eye. Comedian Dickie Palmer called it babysitting drunks. I've been heckled and harassed, beat up and robbed. I've stopped outside a venue to observe that, yes, those were in fact bullet holes in the wall. And once I dove under a truck while a dude shot up the parking lot because the staff had cut him off. The best were the marquees, usually on wheels, advertising $1.50 Budweiser, 25-cent wings, comedy, free. REM said it. There's me in the corner. There's me in the spotlight, losing my religion. And that line, oh no, I've said too much. I haven't said enough. That's fucking comedy right there. Why did I love it? It's simple. I could do it. I just recently been fired by an airline for challenging one of the customers to a fight mid-flight. Yep, I was a flight attendant, or stewardess, as my friends refer to it. And before that, I'd been kicked out of the Army. Well, I was honorably discharged after almost 4 years, 8 hours of microscopic surgery, and then being medevac back to the States. 2 years of rehab and medical retirement, but it still felt like I'd been kicked out. I did a stint in jail, too. And now I was standing on stage somewhere in Mississippi after driving 10 hours in front of a room full of complete strangers who didn't know who I am and couldn't care less, staring back at me with eyes that scream, "Who the fuck are you?" And my eyes glare back. I'm the motherfucker that's being paid to be here. And the war begins. Within minutes, I'm in full barbaric yelp. So how did I end up here, staring at myself with a sawed-off shotgun in my mouth? Who the fuck knows? One drink led to another. Repeat. There was no one there to stop me. I believe at some point I wondered if I could fit it in my mouth. Can't be completely sure. It's weird what you remember. Like the time, 4:23 a.m. The music, Willie Nelson's Red-Headed Stranger. The light over the bathroom sink was on. It appeared to have burned a halo into the wall above it, and I saw myself in the full-length mirror on the wall. It looked like I was trying to suck off a shotgun. I laughed so hard I accidentally pulled the trigger. Was it loaded? Fuck yes, both chambers. It was a double-barreled 20 gauge with a pistol grip because the stock had been sawed off. It was a gift from an old Army friend. He said, just in case. Just in case of what? Am I going to be overrun by 2 wingless quail? It was the most unnecessary item I owned, and I owned a box of condoms, or as I called them, dream catchers. When I laughed, I leaned forward and the momentum caused me to pull the trigger. Nothing happened. Misfire. Holy fuck. I pulled the weapon away from my head and unloaded it. I fell back on the bed in shock and fear. There might have been a tear or two. Then I started laughing again. Hard. I jumped from my notebook, put my pen to pad, and tried to capture the funny. And let me tell you, that joke never worked. And I know it was funny. I was there, for Christ's sakes. I looked like I was trying to perform fellatio on a street howitzer and then started laughing and almost killed myself. That is fucking funny, just not on stage. Before I left, I took the weapon apart and left pieces of it in different garbage bins near the motel. I felt like a villain getting rid of a murder weapon. I donated the ammo to a clay pigeon range. I haven't picked up a shotgun since. After that, I rolled down the windows, cranked up the stereo, cue Pretty Fly by The Offspring. That's how I left Mississippi. I've never been back. That's it. What do you think? I don't know. I kind of stammered there at the end, right? Well, I present that to you. Hope you're doing well. I miss you.